Jamal Carter, a 38-year-old long-haul truck driver, returns to his home in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and notices strange behavior from his wife, Tasha. She is distant, protective of her phone, and increasingly focused on her beauty business. Suspicious, Jamal checks security footage from his recently installed hallway camera and discovers that Tasha has been secretly meeting with a younger man named Devin Hines, a local real estate agent, during his absences. Devin Hines, the younger man involved with Tasha, is ambitious but financially struggling. He sees Tasha not just as a lover, but as a means to elevate his status and gain financial support. Their affair becomes more intense, and Devin begins pressuring Tasha to leave Jamal. Tasha, however, is hesitant, torn between her comfortable life with Jamal and her emotional connection to Devin. Jamal, unaware of the affair, starts noticing changes in Tasha's behavior. She becomes distant and secretive. He begins to suspect something is wrong, but doesn't confront her immediately. Instead, he confides in close friends and starts quietly observing, growing increasingly anxious as the emotional distance between them deepens. Jamal begins to secretly track Tasha's movements using a GPS device he installs on her car. His suspicions are confirmed when he discovers she frequently visits a remote cabin, far from where she claimed to be going. This revelation devastates him, and he becomes consumed by heartbreak and obsession. Rather than confronting her, Jamal spirals into emotional turmoil. His thoughts turn darker as he imagines a betrayal playing out repeatedly in his mind. He isolates himself and begins planning what he perceives as retribution, ultimately deciding to catch Tasha and Rick together to expose him and get closure. But his unstable mental state hints that he may do something more drastic. Jamal's obsession peaks when he follows Tasha to the remote cabin, armed with a gun and wearing gloves to avoid leaving fingerprints. He parks at a distance and waits in the darkness, watching as Tasha and Rick enjoy their weekend together, completely unaware of his presence. Driven by a mixture of rage, heartbreak, and betrayal, Jamal eventually approaches the cabin late at night. What happens next is unclear, but the evidence suggests a violent confrontation. Investigators later piece together that Jamal likely confronted Rick and Tasha, and in the ensuing struggle, he shot and killed Rick. The scene was never officially discovered at the time, and Rick's body was hidden, presumably by Jamal. This moment marks the beginning of the elaborate cover-up that follows, where Jamal not only tries to erase evidence of the crime, but also uses Rick's identity for years. After killing Rick, Jamal goes to great lengths to assume Rick's identity and cover up the crime. He disposes of Rick's body in an unknown location, which remains a mystery to this day. Then, using Rick's personal documents, like his driver's license, credit cards, and possibly Social Security information, Jamal begins living under Rick's name. He takes Rick's truck and leaves the cabin, eventually settling in a different town where no one knows him. Over the next several years, Jamal lives as Rick, securing work, paying bills, and even building relationships while keeping a low profile. His careful behavior ensures that he doesn't draw attention to himself. And since Rick had no close family actively searching for him, no one initially notices the switch. Jamal's manipulation is so convincing that it fools people around him for over a decade, until a random traffic stop or accident, depending on the account, leads to fingerprints being run through a national database. This finally uncovers a shocking truth. The man claiming to be Rick is actually Jamal, a completely different person with a hidden past. After Jamal is discovered during a routine check, like a traffic stop or accident, law enforcement becomes suspicious when his fingerprints don't match the identity he's been using, Rick's. This triggers a deeper investigation, eventually uncovering that he's been impersonating Rick for years. Authorities confront Jamal, and under pressure, he begins to unravel. During questioning, he confesses to assuming Rick's identity, but initially withholds details about Rick's death. However, forensic evidence and inconsistencies in his story lead investigators to suspect foul play. Over time, Jamal admits to killing Rick during their hunting trip, claiming it was an accident or self-defense, depending on the version he gives. Still, the fact remains, Rick's body has never been found, making it difficult to verify the exact circumstances of his death. Jamal is charged with multiple crimes, including identity theft, fraud, and murder or manslaughter, depending on the jurisdiction and evidence. He goes to trial, where the prosecution presents years of deception the missing persons case, and Jamal's eventual confession. The absence of Rick's body adds complexity, but the evidence of identity theft and the stolen life convinces a jury. Jamal is ultimately convicted and sentenced, bringing some closure to Rick's family. Even though they still lack the most crucial piece, Rick's remains. The case highlights how someone can disappear and how a killer can manipulate the system for years until a small slip exposes everything. After Jamal's arrest and conviction, the story gains national attention due to its bizarre and tragic nature. A man vanishes during a hunting trip, and years later, his stolen identity is discovered being used by his killer. Media outlets dive into the details, interviewing Rick's family, law enforcement, and even experts on identity theft and long-term deception. Rick's family expresses a mix of heartbreak and relief. They're devastated that Rick is confirmed dead and that his body was never found, but they are somewhat comforted that they finally know what happened and that justice was served. Still, they mourn the years lost and the psychological toll of not knowing. The case also prompts public discussion about missing persons investigations, particularly how someone could live under another identity for so long without being caught. Law enforcement agencies reevaluate their systems for flagging identity inconsistencies and improving coordination between departments. In the end, the story is seen as both a tragedy and a cautionary tale how easily someone can vanish, how long deception can go undetected, and how justice, though delayed, can still arrive. After the crash, Jamal Carter is arrested and charged with the murders of his wife, Tasha, and her lover, Devin Hines. His behavior after the incident is notably calm and collected as he sits outside the wreckage, seemingly without panic or remorse. When law enforcement arrives, Jamal hands over his identification without protest, further suggesting his dispassionate demeanor in the face of the destruction he caused. Emergency responders quickly assess the scene, confirming that Tasha and Devin are both dead, and their bodies lie beneath collapsed walls of the living room. The media quickly picks up the story, and the case becomes a high-profile one, attracting widespread attention. The prosecution is led by District Attorney Michael Anderson, while Jamal is represented by veteran defense attorney Thomas Wright. The trial is held at the 19th Judicial District Court in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and it is filled with media reporters, family members, and residents who are all deeply affected by the crime. The prosecution's case revolves around the overwhelming evidence, particularly the security camera footage retrieved from Jamal's home. Digital forensic expert Dr. James Morrison testifies, emphasizing that the footage shows clear evidence of premeditation, with Jamal obsessively monitoring his wife and her lover in real time before the attack. The footage is time-stamped, matching the truck's GPS data and Jamal's phone records, which solidify the argument that the murders were planned. Further evidence includes Jamal's internet search history, which contained queries about Louisiana homicide laws and the impact velocities of commercial trucks. The prosecution argues that these searches, combined with a deviation from Jamal's assigned route, clearly demonstrate his intent to carry out the murders. The defense, however, focuses on Jamal's emotional state. They bring in psychiatrist Dr. Elena Rodriguez, who testifies about the severe psychological trauma Jamal experienced due to his wife's infidelity. His defense team paints Jamal as a devoted husband and father who was deeply hurt by the betrayal, and they highlight his spotless driving record and numerous safety awards from his trucking company to argue that his past actions were inconsistent with deliberate violence. Witnesses from the community testify about the Carter marriage, giving conflicting accounts of Jamal's character. Some describe him as a quiet and helpful man, while others, such as Mary Sullivan, Tasha's closest friend, reveal that Jamal exhibited controlling behavior, frequently checking Tasha's phone and questioning her whereabouts. Meanwhile, testimony about Devin's reputation in the real estate industry shows a history of pursuing relationships with married clients, casting doubt on his integrity. The most emotionally charged moment of the trial comes during the testimony of Sarah Carter, Jamal and Tasha's teenage daughter. Sarah testifies via video link from her grandmother's house, and her description of her father's growing paranoia in the months leading up to the murders deeply affects the jury. Sarah also reveals that she found hidden cameras in the house, further reinforcing the idea that Jamal had been monitoring his wife's every move. After 8 days of testimony, the jury deliberates for 6 hours before delivering a verdict. Jamal Carter is found guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder. The judge, Sarah Matthews, delivers the sentence, life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, on October 15, 2008. Jamal shows no reaction as the sentence is read, maintaining the stoic demeanor he has exhibited throughout the entire case. Following the conviction, Devin Hines' parents file a wrongful death civil suit against Jamal Carter, while Tasha's family struggles to cope with the exposure of the affair and their own grief. The house at 4726, Foster Drive, which once symbolized the life Jamal and Tasha had built together, is eventually demolished in 2009, but its vacant lot remains a stark reminder of the tragedy. The security cameras that Jamal installed in his home, originally used to monitor his wife's actions, ultimately become the key piece of evidence that sealed his fate in the criminal justice system. This point underscores the emotional and legal fallout from the murders, as the trial and its aftermath affect not only the families of the victims, but also the entire community. Jamal's conviction brings justice, but it does little to ease the lasting pain caused by his actions. In the aftermath of Jamal Carter's conviction, his case continues to resonate with the community and his family, casting a long shadow over everyone involved. The ripple effects of the double murder, the trial, and Jamal's eventual life sentence reverberate in multiple ways, especially for those closest to victims and to Jamal himself. This point delves deeper into the emotional and societal consequences following the case, focusing on the ongoing struggles of the families, the community's reaction, and the psychological toll the entire ordeal leaves behind. Family impact and grief. The grieving process is notably complex for both families involved. Tasha's family, who had initially supported Jamal and believed in his innocence, is deeply devastated by the revelations of his actions. The shock of the betrayal is compounded by the public exposure of Tasha's affair with Devin. While Tasha's parents struggle with the sudden loss of their daughter, they also have come to terms with the painful reality that the man they once saw as a loving husband was responsible for her death. They feel torn, dealing with their loss and their feelings of betrayal by Jamal. For Devin's family, the aftermath is equally difficult. They lose their son, who was not only an individual in his own right, but also someone who had made his mark in the real estate industry. The fact that Devin was in an affair with a married woman complicates their grief further. His parents, although devastated by the loss, wrestle with their disappointment over his choices and the ultimate consequences of his relationship with Tasha. Jamal's family, particularly his mother, are forced to confront the person their son became. They are heartbroken but still try to defend him, focusing on his past achievements and the good qualities he had prior to the incident. They express disbelief over the man who would commit such a heinous act, insisting that he was manipulated by emotional and psychological circumstances. Despite their emotional distress, they ultimately visit him in prison, maintaining a strained connection with Jamal. Community reaction. The local Baton Rouge community is left reeling after the trial's conclusion. Residents who once viewed Jamal as a quiet, hard-working man now grapple with the shock of his double life. The community's perception of him shifts from a trusted figure to a cold-blooded killer, and many feel betrayed by his actions. Neighbors and co-workers who once admired Jamal for his reliability and dedication to his family are left questioning the true nature of the man they thought they knew. As the media continues to cover the case, local residents express a mix of disbelief and anger. Many are repulsed by the premeditated nature of the killings, especially after learning about the surveillance cameras Jamal had set up to track Tasha's every move. The invasion of privacy and the sheer disregard for human life are primary themes discussed in news reports and local forums. While some members of the community express sympathy for Jamal's apparent emotional distress over his wife's infidelity, the overwhelming consensus is one of shock and condemnation. People are left reflecting on how easily a life could be shattered by such an act of violence. The psychological toll. The psychological toll of the murders is felt not only by the victims' families and the community, but also by Jamal himself. While he initially maintained a stoic and composed exterior throughout the trial and the investigation, the long-term consequences of his actions eventually catch up with him. In prison, Jamal's emotional state deteriorates. He spends months in isolation, reflecting on his actions and the irreversible damage caused by his outbursts of rage. The overwhelming guilt eventually starts to take its toll on him, and he begins experiencing intense bouts of remorse. However, His remorse is not enough to change the fact that he is serving a life sentence. In an attempt to understand his motivations, Jamal is evaluated by prison psychologists who delve into his complex emotional landscape. The evaluation reveals that Jamal's deep-seated insecurities and fear of abandonment played a significant role in his explosive reaction to his wife's infidelity. Psychologists suggest that Jamal's controlling tendencies were a manifestation of his need to assert dominance and protect his fragile self-image. However, these psychological evaluations do not excuse his violent actions. They merely shed light on the psychological factors that contributed to his devastating decisions. Legal and social consequences. Following the trial and Jamal's sentencing, legal battles continue. Devin Hines' parents file a wrongful death lawsuit against Jamal, seeking financial compensation for the loss of their son. Tasha's family, too, grapples with the emotional burden of the murder and the trauma of learning about the affair, but they ultimately decide against a civil suit, focusing instead on their own healing process. The case also prompts discussions about the psychological effects of infidelity on relationships and the dangerous potential for violence when betrayal occurs. Many advocate for better mental health support for individuals who experience the emotional fallout of such traumatic experiences, and some local organizations use the case as a way to raise awareness about the importance of addressing mental health issues before they escalate to violent outcomes. The demolition of the Carter home. A significant symbol of the Carter family's once seemingly perfect life, the family home at 4726 Foster Drive is demolished in 2009. The house, which had witnessed the rise and fall of the Carter family dynamic, becomes an eerie reminder of the tragedy that unfolded within its walls. Its demolition, while a practical step taken by the authorities, serves as a metaphorical attempt to erase the painful memory of the murders. The vacant lot that replaces a home becomes a point of reflection for those who drive by it, serving as a somber testament to the tragic events that unfolded there. Legacy of the case. As the years pass, the Carter case becomes part of local lore, frequently cited in discussions about the psychological and emotional impact of domestic betrayal and the lengths to which a person's mental state can push them. Local schools, community groups, and law enforcement agencies use the case as an example in seminars and discussions about preventing domestic violence, infidelity, and the importance of recognizing early signs of emotional distress. The story of Jamal, Carter, Tasha, and Devin serves as a stark reminder of the devastating effects of unchecked emotional turmoil and the destructive power of betrayal. It is a story that continues to affect those who live through it, even as the years go by.